Thank you to the Three Principles Global community for offering these conversations. These webinars are intended to support community conversations on the quotes of Sydney Banks. If you're not familiar with the Three Principles Global community, it is a nonprofit organization committed to disseminating the understanding of the three principles as discovered by Sydney Banks. The three principles point toward the true source of human experience. Insightful realization of the three principles allows anyone to understand how all human experience is created and to glimpse into the very nature of that creative source. These insights uncover our natural resilience, innate feelings of well-being, and our natural connection and access to a universal wisdom found within everyone. The website is 3pgc.org.
These conversations on the quotes of Sydney Banks are for us to have open conversations about what you're hearing and from the quote. Also, to just be in community to explore more, with always the willingness to hear more, see more, and just gain some additional understanding about what's possible through looking in the direction of the principles. My name is Sherry Ray, and they've asked me to facilitate these conversations this month, and it's been my honor. So I'm glad to have you here. So last week when we met, I invited anybody who wanted to bring a favorite quote to please bring one. And if you did, great and wonderful. And if you didn't, I have one. But does anyone have a quote that just seems to be working you or that you'd like to have a conversation about?
Thank you, Sherry. I was just pulling up the missing link, and I had my bookmark and a page that is really pertinent to my situation. I'll read the quote on page 58. It says, "Many people make the mistake of believing that their moods create their thoughts. In reality, it is their thoughts that produce their moods." In speaking with a family member, I was told that I don't allow for the full spectrum of feelings. I kind of cut off the anxiety on top and the depression on the bottom. And my response would be, well, why do you even want to go there? I study Zen a lot, and there's a reason it's called the middle way. We don't need to let the pendulum swing so far. But when I tried to interject something about looking at your thoughts rather than spending time on your feelings, then it was, well, maybe some guruism or psychobabble. And I get that. It's a way of, kind of dismissing that approach. And maybe I was getting the cart before the horse. So, if someone's not interested or not aware or open enough to hear about thoughts, then should we just be with them for a while and allow those feelings to get exposed and then take it from there? To me, it's backwards, but maybe without being self-righteous or alienating someone, we need to pause and listen and, get off our soapbox. Thanks.
So just page 58 in the missing link. I just happen to have it right here. So I appreciate you bringing that quote up. Many people make the mistake of believing that their moods create their thoughts. In reality, it is their thoughts that produce their moods.
Yesterday I was working in an artist studio, and across the road there is an artist, and he started talking about philosophy, and I just listened, and I could see the thing he was mentioning. And at some point I said, well, have you he's interested in philosophy, so I said, have you heard of Sydney Banks? He's a philosopher. And he said, no, I haven't. I said, well, he's a Scottish man, and he had an enlightenment experience. Like, That's exactly the reaction. I was like, yeah, there is some of those, he said immediately. So I was like, great. And then he kept telling me, and I thought, well, I can listen. You know, inside of me was like, oh, that's the wrong direction. That's the wrong direction. But what good I was going to do going out of it, you know? Just so I just keep listening, and you know, he shared, and I may have said a thing or two, but very simple. We just keep going, and then I went to put my stuff to dry, and the teacher, and she's a young girl, she's gorgeous and great, and she said to me, send me your details. I want to know, you know, if you publish your work, because this is my last term here, and I don't know how I told her about the new paradigm psychology. I don't know how in the conversation show up, and she said, oh, I would love to hear more about that. So two different, you encounter two different things in the same space of an hour.
Mhm.
And it's like, ah, so nice to share with people that want to hear about it, that actually want to hear about it. That doesn't have to be difficult. Of course, my mind was like, oh, what would I tell her about first? And should I send her the same links? And I'm really invested in her, you know, not dismissing it. And I think it kind of breaks my heart every time you share something, it gets dismissed by the intellect. But I have to remember that it's also me a while ago, and that eventually it got me. So in the matter of sharing with others and pointing to others, I think having patience and knowing that the right time, that the feeling comes first, and then when you're in that feeling, whatever you share is going to be received differently, right? So that sometimes takes a little bit of warming up, of really just not going to head on, which with my family, I feel I have the right to go head on, and that's why it's so hard. But just keep on living the feeling myself and the understanding myself. I feel it's the long game.
Mm.
I don't know if this has to do with the quote, but
Mhm.
that is
Mhm.
what's coming up.
So I'm going to repeat the quote for a few people that just logged on just to see. We're on page 58 of the missing link. And the quote that was brought to the table for discussion was this. Excuse me. Many people make the mistake of believing that their moods create their thoughts. In reality, it is their thoughts that produce their moods. Comes to mind for me when, for whatever reason, somebody, if I share the way it looks to me and they take a real strong stance that, you know, whatever it is. And I always just kind of throw my hands up and it's like, you know what? That's what it looks like to me. We can move on. That's the way it looks to me, and everybody has a way to see it in the way that makes sense to them. And because if there's no receptivity, if there's no curiosity, I don't know what's the point of continuing the conversation myself, you know, not in a place of judgment, but just in a place of, it doesn't sound like a topic anybody wants to talk about. No harm, no foul. And I kind of think most people learn from things, I mean, really from things you never say. Just in how you live, and the simplest things seem, I don't know, the simplest things seem to have impacted me, and being around people just in how they open my mind by having a different way of doing things. And it kind of opened my mind to going, well, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know, you know, just the way that thought was pinning me in. I would say it wouldn't be pinning in somebody else in the same way. And that always kind of intrigued me.
Yeah, I like your word that you said, receptivity. If it's not there, you really can't shoehorn your way in. it's kind of like getting in a pair of shoes that are about a half size too small. And if they're not interested, then don't force the issue, out of my innocence and wanting to help. I think this is a shorter route, but maybe you've got to empty yourself in the feeling realm to ride the elevator up to a higher level of feeling, and then you'll be able to look at your thoughts. When you're down in the basement, it's pretty dark and dingy there, and you can't possibly see that the view could be with more clarity.
And when you're that far in the dark, it's all just, maybe for you, you can see something better, but I can't, because it's so dark where I am. There's no feeling it could ever be at a higher place, a brighter place. And the innocence, I love what you said about the innocence of something that has been so helpful to me personally. I can almost get to be a little bit of a zealot, because I'm like going, wait, I can't even, it took so much of a load off me. My enthusiasm would come, but it's like, whoa, 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 I'm not in charge of any of this. Where it lands is where it lands, and where it goes is where it goes. But that was just me. I can get to be a little bit of a zealot, a fundamentalist in that sense, because I just know it brought so much good into my life, a good feeling into my life. But not, I can't pick for somebody else. I just can't.
And you brought up one other good word, fundamentalist. The individual grew up in a fundamentalist environment and had things thrown at him constantly. This is the way. And so there was a lot of that. And I think some of that gets triggered, when you kind of don't have permission to, speak. And, when you were a young person and you didn't have a choice, you never were granted permission. You just said, this is the way it is. Listen. So thank you.
Wow, thank you.
I will try to speak out. I'm coming from Denmark. I'm not sorry for my English. You have to be patient. But if you, as you were talking about, no, I've been on a seminar with normally coaching, and I was so. We have a last session, and I was so annoyed about a child being crying all the session, and I was just aware of that at all the ending up in my head. And when the session was stopped, the teacher told us to be quiet for 20 minutes. And the only thing in my head before the session stopped was to argue, to tell her how ignoring that was with that child. Come on, all the session. And that was before I was aware of the yes. And when I walked from the session to the hotel, and that quietness before she told me to be quiet, only thing it was on my mind was to tell all the people around me how ignoring it was, this child in this room. And when she told us to be quiet for 20 minutes, I realized it was out of I could not do anything with that. And that, when we know to be quiet, but when people tell us to be quiet, for me, it was a very good experience. And I walked to my hotel 20 minutes just to be quiet. not to speak, not I'm a person who I can be arguing I have to say, "Whoa." And she just told us, quiet and slow, don't say anything for 20 minutes. And that was an eye opener for me. And afterward, I have been seeing this tree principle. And yeah, you can see a connection, if you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you.
So just sharing from what you're sharing, what would you say you saw from the principles in that space?
In that space, I saw, because I was not aware of the three principle at that time. I was so much up in my head. But when I left the room, you know, I sat in the room. I was so much up in the room. I heard this child in the room was just in the garden. She was just crying, and I was just thinking, oh, where's the parents? Come do something. And then the teacher told us when the session was over, and she just said, please leave the room from here, go 20 minutes with silence. And I sat there in the room with all my, how could I go from this room without saying nothing? And that it was the most beautiful things for me to experience. I could go from the room without saying nothing, walking around the city, saying nothing, just experience. And for me, it was very big insight. Very good. Yeah.
Gosh, thank you. I mean, thank you for sharing that, because just in what you said, it feels like you got really introduced to a complete new reality by just not by not taking all your thoughts from here to here. You just got introduced to a very fresh reality, a different reality, fresh for
Yes.
you.
It was fresh for me at the moment. I could hope that I will have much more of that refreshing views.
Yeah, that's guaranteed.
Sorry.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. Yes.
For all of
Thank
us.
you.
That's for
Yeah.
all of us. Guaranteed. Thank you for sharing.
Hey guys, wanted to say that I had a similar experience to you with someone who was excited about the conversation and then resistant to it, and it was the same person. This was a friend that he's abroad now, and I sent him a message about, man, I had this huge common sense moment. And that led into a conversation that he said, this is the most exciting conversation I had in I don't know when. And he said, sounds like we figured it out. Like we can write a manual for the mind. And since he said that, I a few days later, I recommend him George Pransky's book, The Secret to Mental Health. And I say, you're going to love it. This is a great book. And he shredded it to threads, meaning, oh, but this is not very rigorous. It's like this Western, like he put, if he had, I don't know, the entire logical mind, rational mind, he just poured it into it. And I said, well, it looks like we've been reading different books, because for me, this was profoundly, I mean, life-changing. Yeah. It was funny because talking to me, he had certain ears, but reading someone who didn't know, who he judged as with just another book of someone who doesn't really know what he talks about, and now they throw some quantum physics in it, so I should not take this seriously. He saw nothing.
The same words on the same page, except where it landed up here, through what filters it was heard through or read through,
Yeah, yeah. It seemed as though he took the book, but with a notebook next to it to like pick it apart. He didn't do that, but the way he told me about it, well, it seemed like he did that.
Mm.
Anyway, that was interesting. And something that you said before, Sherry, I think if I understood it well, that sometimes our presence will speak much louder and our state of mind much louder than anything we can share about the principles, or at least it will get people to be curious. Today, for example, I have a co-worker. We share an office, and I started this job at the beginning of the month, and we've had a good vibe. But since this past weekend, I've been, I would say, more quiet in my head, and that has given me a better feeling since then. And the atmosphere today was just so cool in the office. So lighthearted, relaxed, and I thought we don't even need to talk about principles. Not seriously, but it still blows my mind how just by being in a good feeling, people get it's contagious.
In my experience, I think it's so when people talk a lot about contribution and purpose, and I think it can be so close if you're really conscious about your contribution, like you going into work with a clear mind. What better contribution to the whole? Coming into with a clear mind, or even being lighthearted, or being sitting and grounded in that place. I'll say your natural self, it's for all of us. That's our natural self, is when we're clear-minded, we're clear-headed and warm-hearted and caring and compassionate. And I don't know. I don't think there's a better contribution in the world to be even walking through an airport carrying that, or any other place. Just to really be in that place makes a huge difference. You could check contribution and purpose right off your box right now. That's a gift to the whole.
Yeah, and it's funny the impact, I guess, that it has within. So I work with people that come to the place. So how do you say that? Customers, let's say, or users of the service that we have.
Mhm.
And some of them come like agitated or nervous or something, and I'm not, and they quiet down. It's cool to see that they get relaxed. So for perhaps the 20 minutes that we are there talking and doing something on the computer, seems like they take a break from all the noise. If I don't have noise, I mean, if I have it, we'll both be noisy.
Guaranteed to escalate, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, tonight I know there's not so many people around, and I feel more comfortable to say something. I have been around sometimes, or what do you call it? I have not been saying many things, because I feel there's so many good people around this thing. But sometimes I also been, and I don't know if I have to say be provoked something, because when this simplicity I like this when Sydney Banks, his theory is so simple. And when we are going out and the next level of the simplicity, I sometimes forget how simple it is. Does that make any sense for people? Some people, I'm not sure it's the right place to say it, but it's just I feel it just at the moment. And that we sometimes make it more difficult than it is. I don't know what else to say, but it's I just when I hear Sydney Banks, I just love the simplicity. I just fell down and feel it. Yeah. Sometimes when people speak about it, I hear about it. It feels so complicated. So if for me, just always come back and listen. Yeah.
Beautiful. And the fact that
Yeah.
we can hear Sydney Banks himself speak from his level of understanding of what he saw and his level of consciousness, it to me, it reaches in and speaks to the truth in us. And then my mind will complicate it if it tries to figure something out. But just listening to Sydney Banks and letting it wash over you, it is so simple. Our intellect complicates it. And I don't know about you guys. I get amnesia and forget, because I took it to my intellect or my intellect kind of took it out of my hand and went to work on it. Because everything looks simple.
Yeah.
Everything looks simple when it's neutral, but until it's not. So no, I think what you're saying is absolutely true. Anybody else? See the simplicity and the intellect, what each part does with information.
I saw something this morning. Someone was talking about their addiction, and the facilitator of the coach was talking, and then something came to me, and I was like, you can't get over thinking by thinking. And it kind of gave me like, you can't get over thinking by thinking. And then this image of which is something that happened, was a bit of a realization a time ago. It's like there's this pressure cooker that we can call this, and if I turn the heat off, it's gonna cool down. And then if you think about the inside of a pressure cooker, there's this thick vapor, right? It's so thick that you cannot see, but clouds are vapor. Clouds can get so thick that they hide the sun itself. So the same way, our thinking can be so thick that we can't see. There is no clarity. But if I take that pressure cooker off the heat and I put it on the bench, it's gonna cool down. And that vapor is gonna be back to be water, and the clarity is, the possibility to see in real time is there. It's already kind of a nicer feeling, isn't it? So I think that's the simplicity that get us. That's the simplicity where it's like, that's the there's nothing to do instruction, is, well, taking the pressure cooker off the heat source, it's all that is required. And that is what, for me, Sid points to. Don't think and analyze yourself. Because that's the heat. And some of us, I didn't know what life would be like without thinking and analyzing. It's all I did. It's all they told me to do. It was the direction. And now I think, oh, I see what he's saying. Cool down. Those 20 minutes without, and the other thing that come up is like sometimes we're too intentional, but calming down is something that happens to us if we let it happen. It's natural to us. It's not a doing. It's just what happens when you disengage from your intellect. You know, those 20 minutes walking just settle, clear the mind. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, the simplicity and the clarity, and then the intellect is like putting the heat on it. So I am aware now. It stuck with me, that metaphor. I think Sid has it in one of his books as well. But it's like, you know, if my bank account is low, I put that pot off the heat, right? And I'm still present. I still don't go out for dinner as much as I used to. I still use my common sense. But then I notice another time I'm in bed and I'm like, oh my God, I have this other thing to pay, and I have that to pay, and I had to pay. That's turning the heat up. It's not going to lead to clarity. It's just going to lead to fog, confusion, and eventually to clarity again. But anyway, it's really lovely to share about this. I think the metaphor kind of speaks a little bit to what our part on it is. What is my part in this? What am I doing? Am I turning the heat up? Is this a smart thing to do right now? It's going to help me anyway? Or just put it to the side and see what comes up when I'm calm.
And at every stage of that questioning, it's so innocent. You know, like you said, we were told to figure it out. And then we find out now, wait, going after trying to figure it out it's going to bring me nothing but struggle or suffering. You know, it's not going to. So it's also innocent. It's also innocent in what human beings do to understand or live in a better feeling. And luckily we get these course corrections. Just like you see through metaphor. It's such a great way of seeing these course corrections that just don't make sense now, but to somebody it made sense, and to try to figure it out, not anymore.
Talk about the intellect, and I'm noticing myself that I'm tripping over myself. It's such a simple quote, and remembering that actually this is not a prescription, this is a description of how the system works. And in my mind, I was already going up in my intellect and going, oh, so you don't go to the feeling, go to the thought. And I'm thinking, no, but Sydney Banks can't be saying do this or do that. Sydney Banks is saying this is how it works. And people will go the way it makes sense for them to go. But the understanding is, yes, thought creates the mood. It is not the mood that creates the thought. And that's just the description. Then when I get up in my head, then I'm looking, oh, okay, but listening to the feeling, oh, but no, we must go to the thought but I don't think that's what, I don't know so, but I do not think that's what Sydney Banks is telling me. Sydney Banks is just saying, this is how the system works. It's just telling me the truth. But then I'm leaving the truth when I go up in my head, and I leave the simplicity of it because I'm now trying to argue in my own head. Because I've been so caught up as we were sitting in this room, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, what's the approach? And I'm thinking, no, but that's not what I'm hearing here. I'm hearing a truth. But then what makes sense to me after the truth is what makes sense. That's just what came to mind as you were talking about the intellect and the getting caught up, etc.
I think you said it so simply that it's a description, not a prescription. And that is simple, and it really just Thank you for that.
even though we are so aware about this simplicity, we get caught up in everything. Yeah, and that for me, it's sometimes I think that I know I'm so aware of everything, and even though I get caught up, um, then I listen to Sydney Banks, and he make it so simple for me, and then I say, "Oh, just relax, just listen, and then and relax in it or to it. I don't know. I don't know. Um, but 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 why is it though we have to? I have to go back, listen again for this feeling I know I have deep inside. Um, Sometimes I have to be reminded of it. I don't know if you also have to be reminded of that we have this silent in us. We can go so far, and we say, "Oh, what's happening?" And then we have to come back to be reminded of what silence is inside of. And for me, the best therapy is Sydney. I just have to say, there's so many people around, but he's just so calm, so relaxed. And another voice for me to hear. Yeah.
Well, I like that part about this intelligence of mind that kind of alerts you in your own way that in that I'm guessing a bad feeling is like, oh wait, go look at Sydney Banks. So it's like the wisdom inside each one of us that says, hey, you might want to go listen to Sydney and unwind. It's like it can be different for all of us, but it's that intelligence that is there to support us that we all possess that will bring us something, you know what I mean? That brings us something to remind us we're way up in our intellect, or the feeling reminds us we're in our intellect. And I love this. I love this saying that came to mind when you said that about when we understand more fully what this operating system of being a human being. I think it can be so much simpler. From what comes to mind for me is like, oh, I don't need to make that a problem. Being human, I don't need to make that a problem, that I get amnesia and I forget and I believe my thinking, and then something says, oh, you drank the Kool-Aid again. You're believing your thinking. You think what you're seeing is real. It's like, and then I go, oh, I used to make being human a problem that had to be solved. And the problem was me, it was so personal. It was me. I was a problem that had to be solved. And I like that saying now about, no, I don't need to make that a problem. I just believed the story I believed the story my mind wrote, or my thinking wrote, or something like that. It can be so simple that we're human, and we just get caught up in it, to use your we don't need to make that problem. I don't need to make that a problem. It was a problem for me for a long time, just being human. It's a great relief that I can just be human and be at peace with being human and all those kind of things that go with it.
I have to say that it's so released for me too, that it's okay to recognize, or to say I'm just a human, because I'm not saying that solve all, but it's a good health for our life, our experience, to say I'm just a human, I make mistake. Before I was aware of this principle, I I think most of us, most of all people, have been living this way, but not been aware of it. I don't know what to say, but I'm just thankful to be here and thankful for you to be here. And yeah, thank you.
Hello, everybody. So, yeah, I decided to take a break in my day so I could get back to that feeling, that peaceful feeling that you guys are talking about. Um, what I wanted to share is that I do volunteer groups. Once a week, I go to a substance abuse treatment center, and I'm working with people with all kinds of different backgrounds, mental health issues. Some of them are taking pretty heavy duty medications, what have you. And I want to make a difference. I want to try and make a difference, but I also have to realize that it's not really up to me. It's not up to me at all. And basically, what I'm finding is that the only thing I need to do is to show up. I just have to show up. So last week there was I don't know, about 7 or 8 people that I was able to gather because I made it volunteer for the people that are there. Before it was kind of required, and then we changed it up a little bit, and I said I want it to be the people that want to come.
Mm.
So some of them have gone through it with me before, others are new. So I'm using a curriculum that was done by Jacqueline Hollows. Yeah. So I use that curriculum, but of course, it's just a scaffold, I would say, just a way of discussing it, and I try to make it a conversation, not like a lecture or a lesson or something like that, just a conversation. So this time I was doing it by myself. I don't always do it by myself, but I did. So there was a few people sharing, and we were going back and forth. And then this one gentleman, of course, everybody that I talk to, they're always asking me, what advice do you have for me? What can you tell me that will make my life better? How can I do better? And I always tell them that's really, I can only tell you, like someone was saying before, about the operating system. I can talk to you about the operating system, but the only way for you really to understand it is to actually to do it, to use it, and to be aware of it. So this particular gentleman was talking a lot during the class. And of course, I'm thinking to myself, well, I want this to be, a group conversation. And I kept thinking to myself to try and cut him off, to say something. But after a while, I was like, this person needs to talk for some reason, whatever it is that they want to talk. So I tried to go with that feeling, and I kept with that feeling. And it was interesting because at the end of the class, he pulled me aside. He said, listen, I'm sorry that I was talking so much. He said to me that, he finds it rare that he gets situations where people are willing to listen to him.
Mm.
So I was like, wow, I guess somehow I knew what the right thing to do was, and yes, other people shared and other people got something out of it, but we don't know what our showing up is going to do. By me not getting caught up in my thinking and just going with whatever was happening, kind of going with the flow, this person realized for themselves. I didn't say a word, not a word about it. And he was apologizing to me. And I said, no, 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 you don't need to apologize to me. You know, not at all. You know, I'm glad that you felt comfortable enough to share. And this is someone that I had seen in previous, you know, workshops that I had done. And I had never seen him share that much, you know, for that long. I mean, he did share, but not like this. So I guess the point of what I'm saying is that, yes, sometimes it's just as simple as showing up and just going with that deeper wisdom, that deeper knowledge that we all have. And that just by him talking, he was able to see it for himself also. He saw it. It's not that he saw it with his eyes, he saw it in himself, within himself. And that's why I do what I do. Just for that one person to say that. But I've also found that this works in every situation in my life. I was watching something with oh God, Aaron, forget his last name.
Turner.
Aaron Turner, yes. So he said there are no exceptions. No exceptions to this. This works everywhere. Everywhere you want to look, it'll work. Because, like Sid knew, that this is the way the operating system works. There's, you know, you could argue it all you want. You could come up with reasons why it's not true and this and that. But I find that when you actually do it, there's no denying it. That this is the way it works. And, you know, when you're talking to somebody and you see them nodding their head, then you know that you're hitting something. Even though you might not be saying it in the way that you think is getting to them or that they're understanding, they do. People do. We just intuitively know. There's something inside of us when we know or hear that somebody is speaking the truth. It's like it just bypasses the brain and it just goes right here. So, you know, sometimes I get caught up with thoughts about money and making an income doing this. And then when I have days like that, those thoughts go out the window because I know that somehow or other I'm going to be taken care of. Somehow, some way. I don't have to try. I just have to do. And that's not always easy to realize. It's like, oh, I gotta do this. I gotta do this. I gotta make this phone call. I gotta talk to that person. You know, I gotta convince them. No, I don't have to convince them. I have a conversation. If the person understands what I'm talking about and is excited by it, great. If not, there's a whole world out here of other people that I could talk to. And these are some of the things that I'm learning for myself. And I've been around a while and I've been in business and I've dealt with a lot of people. And yet still, there's something that goes beyond our intellect. There's something that goes beyond what we think we need to know or what we think we need to do. You know, there's miracles waiting to happen if we can let go of that. And I constantly see it. I see it happening. So that's what I try to tell people, you know, when I work with them. Kick the tires. Check it out for yourself. Don't go by what I'm saying. I mean, if you hear something I'm saying, yes, okay, listen to that, but listen to yourself first. You are the most important person. You are the most important. You have to see it. Nobody else can make you see it. You have to see it. So, yeah, the quote by Sid about our mood and our thinking, it's very appropriate. Very appropriate. Thank you.
Can I share something, a metaphor that came to mind? Kind of want to add a little bit to the quote today. it's very interesting how if you just shut up inside, good moods come, like it's like a little bit of a spring or like a geyser from the those towers of water. If you just shut up, it will come at some point. And I've noticed how what you said about Stuart, about this person who apologized. I think what happened there, and I'm reflecting on it because it kind of happens to me. That since he had a space, he just saw something. He saw that he was talking too much. Perhaps he never saw that because he was too worried about the person in front of him not listening or wanting to interrupt. It seems to me, so this is what came to mind. If you just give it quiet in the mind, very spot on, the middle way, it's as though it gets spacious, as in the mountain range, and then at some point the mind will go, "Hey, check this out," and then it will echo in your mind. For example, just for me right now, I thought, I've been thinking for so long about how do I start, or how do I get the coaching practice in motion and not just clients here and there. How do I do it? How do I do it? How do I do it? And just now it came and said, well, that's exactly what is getting in the way. All that thinking. If you just shut up and get in a good feeling, people will ask. It will come in its own. Yeah, it just felt like one of these echoes.
That was a wonderful conversation, and I appreciate each of you for sharing. And if you didn't share, come back on Monday, bring a quote and launch the conversation on Monday. We'll be right here next Monday, So thank you all. I hope you have a great week, and thank you for sharing what you're seeing.
Thank you very much for listening. There are abundant resources to learn more through the 3PGC website. You can also learn more by visiting my YouTube channel or my podcast, Connected Living: Truths and Understandings for the Business of Life.